Unless you live under a rock, I'm sure everyone watching this video has at least heard of the indie game Lethal Company by popular game dev Zeekerss. It's a multiplayer horror game that has recently had the internet in a chokehold. Its combination of being surprisingly fun yet terrifying at the same time is addicting, to say the least. There have been thousands of people on the internet giving this game their flowers, and understandably so. I personally have been having a blast playing it with my friends. Funnily enough, that's where this background footage is coming from. To demonstrate how wild this game is, here's a small clip from one of my gaming sessions with a group of my friends.
I mean, the full state isn't that bad.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibes I'm getting right now, and that's probably why I want to leave as soon as possible.
I mean, what are they gonna do? Stab my neck?
I remember we went through here. This is the funny room. That's dead end. I think it came from the very left.
Alright.
No. Today, however, that's not what I'm going to get into. As I've played the game these past couple weeks, I found a video published by a content creator by the name of Daszombes. In the video, he discusses and details his many concepts and ideas for the game, as well as commissioning artists to illustrate them. I was so enamored while watching it, and it gave me motivation to be creative and try for myself. So I decided to gather some of my friends to create a showcase of our creativity and concepts for Lethal Company to present in this video. I'm super proud of the final result of this concept collection, and I'm sure you will all love them. Before getting into it, I want to give a massive thanks to all my friends that participated in the curation of these ideas. Without you all, this big idea of mine wouldn't be possible, and I appreciate all of your creativity and dedication. This is my first collaboration type video, and seeing how fun it was to see everyone's ideas and make my own as well, I would love to do more of these. I also want to thank Daszombes for giving me the inspiration for this video. The effort he put into not only creating his ideas, but also describing them with such intricate detail is wonderful. His video is a wonderful watch, and I highly recommend you give his Lethal Company video a view at some point. I'll link it in the description. With that out of the way, enjoy me and my friend's Lethal Company concept collection. The first one from my section is a concept for a new facility titled The Lab. I'll read that out now. This location will have a semi-rare chance of spawning in some moons, as well as maybe having a specific moon as a 100% guarantee, similar to the paid moons. The lab will have a dirty, rustic vibe of a facility assumed to have a once white and sleek look. The lab will be covered in a varying amount of moss and vines. The walls will be stained with shades of yellow and green. Most metal in the facility will be rusted and corroded due to time and the exposure of chemicals. There will even be spots in the facility where the ceiling will be partially broken, and you can see the light peering into the room from outside. These patches will also be particularly useful to determine how long you have spent looking for scrap. There will be many rooms of test tubes, chemical storage, and experiment rooms. The test tubes will be broken and shattered, pointing to evidence of once housing ferocious creatures of many assortments, some of which we may see roaming the hall in the areas. The storage rooms will be corridor-esque in structure, with them being rectangular shaped and having shelves lined on both sides. These ones will be cleaner than the rest of the facility, and in most if not all scenarios will require a key to access due to the scientists wanting sound security. There will be a few unique items that can only be found in facilities here. The experiment rooms will have an array of things that can spawn in them. The layout of said rooms will have many broken terminals wrapped in dust and vines. There will be a glass barrier in the middle of the room separating the terminals from whatever the scientists are experimenting on. The glass barrier will have cracks spread throughout it, and there will even be some glass shards on the floor. On the other side of the barrier will be one of three things based on the generation. 1. A small steel stand assumed to have once held up something. 2. Some sort of movement constrictor to bind something, or someone, in place for a long duration. And 3rd, an assortment of uncollectible metal beams laid on the floor, which is somewhat a form of foreshadowing. In all generations, there will be a machine on the ceiling, looking to be what is controlled by terminals for tests. The labs will have similar branching paths to the other facilities with winding roads and mazes of hallways. Instead of the usual staircase to lower down or go up floors, each staircase room will be substituted with a ladder room. It might also make chases seem more interesting than before. Now let's get into the lore and backstory behind this facility. There are many labs spread throughout many planets and moons set in place by the company themselves to research and evaluate the many environments and creatures. At first, these research outposts were a huge success, with them collecting much data on the creatures we now have on our bestiary. Then one day, the research outpost began finding an array of new creatures, some of which were more dangerous than others. The company issued a series of experiments on said creatures which went horribly wrong across every facility. Before the company could issue a PSA on the matter, it was already too late. These enemies ravaged throughout each moon and left the labs they were once held hostage in to ruin. Instead of trying again, the company decided it was best to scrap the operation and put their focuses on other matters. Over time, these research labs corroded and became barren and run down, as well as hosting creatures and monsters of many assortments. Some of the creatures in questions came directly from the failed experiments that left the labs in such poor condition. Now company employees search said facilities for scrap and profit, unknowing of the horrors that accompanied the now abandoned labs. The enemy in question is one of great danger. The Polymorph is an entity named after its ability to change into any shape that it wants. Polymorphs tend to change into things that they see in their environment. The most common of these things is the everyday scrap that the company collects for profit. That means that it can change into any item that features in the game in any given run. They mainly do this to lure unsuspecting employees to their demise. They will only change to their true form to strike an employee when the time is right. Its unchanged form has a shiny look to it and is made purely of malleable and bendable metals. It has an almost human silhouette, with the limbs being more lanky and the shoulders being more broad in stature. Besides its shiny looks, it has no other distinguishable features on both their face and body. They have a preference of wrapping the end of their limbs around their prey's throats to strangle them to death. One ability they have over the everyday creature in a run is their ability to follow employees outside of their facilities due to their malleable nature. This makes them a substantial threat that can strike the employees at any given time. Their origins are as interesting as their abilities. Whenever the company labs were still active in their research, they came across an unidentified metal substance on a number of moons. They immediately issued the facility upon intercepting the substance to experiment on them as soon as possible. As you know, these experiments backfired and the substance turned into the Polymorph due to the testing process. With the scientists not having any knowledge on these strange creatures at the time, they stood no chance against them, and the Polymorphs quickly ravaged and laid waste to each and every research lab on many moons. After the lab operation was fully abandoned by the company, the Polymorphs made the research labs their new home, and most if not all now reside in these facilities. To settle their thirst for blood, they now shift into the scrap and items they found in the labs upon exploring to catch intruders or employees by surprise. The Tendr are creatures that have a plant-like appearance and have appendages like vines, hence the name. Any features beyond this are unseen. They have two phases to them, both have differing levels of threat. The first has them cling to the ceiling almost like a grassy cocoon. They are completely stationary in this form and will not move from their selected spot unless an employee turns up. If an unsuspecting employee were to walk close enough to a Tendrild's area, they would be snatched up by the Tendrild from where they were standing. The Tendrild will then strangle them by means of their appendages and douse them with poison. Tendrild have poison spread throughout their vine-like limbs and mainly use it to kill their prey. One way to avoid their grasp is to have an employee hit their appendages with an object to set you free. Even then, the once held employee will have a poison effect on them for a short duration, potentially killing them. The reason for their killing is to use the blood of their enemies as a fuel of sorts. It enables them to make more poison in their veins and overall powers them up. Whenever the Tendrild kills an employee, they will enter in their second phase. For labeling's sake, we'll call this the tainted form. Their appearance drastically changes when in this form. For starters, their vine-like limbs and appendages uncoil from their body, removing all the grassy covering they once had veiling their true features. When removed, we see fleshy, veiny skin across their inner body with a large gaping mouth in the center filled with rows of teeth deep down. Their skin is covered with many indentions spread throughout each part of their inner body that we cannot see inside. From a visible standpoint, they have no eyes, but they can still see you. The tendrils will loosen their grip from the ceiling and will start to dangle from it like jungle vines rather than cling to it. The tainted tendril will no longer be stationary after consuming an employee and opt to chase down their prey rather than waiting for the employee to do the work for them. They are rather fast and will swing from the ceilings in pursuit of a company employee. These rats don't pose much of a threat by themselves, but become highly dangerous when in groups. They don't have much of a notable appearance, with them looking like regular rats, with the only difference being that their fur is a dark green color. They have mostly regular behaviors of a rat. One key thing to their behavior that is a new presence is that they have a symbolic relationship with the tendrils. The rats will split up to search for employees in facilities and, upon seeing one, will call out to the rest of the rat horde to signal a meetup. Once they gather near an employee's location, they will viciously attack them until they die. Once dead, the leeching rats will carry the corpse to the tendril. In exchange, the tendril will give the rats the food and nutrients they need and send them on their way. The leeching rats can be stopped before they call out to the rest of the horde by hitting it with a shovel. If you miss your opportunity, however, you might want to consider ending your trip short. The final idea I have is quite different from the rest that I've shown. The scrappers are many groups of people that go to many moons in search of scrap, just like the company employees. None of the scrapper groups are associated with each other, however. They usually are self-isolated teams of 4 that travel together to make a profit, as well as terminate anyone or anything that stands in their way. They can be found on any moon roaming the halls looking for scrap and are able to pick up and hold scrap in their inventory, just like the player. They will have similar behavior traits to the Mimic to a certain regard, with them replicating something similar to a player's behavior patterns to achieve a somewhat realistic feel. They will usually stick together, but have the ability to split up. They are also vulnerable to every type of monster in the game, and will have the capability of dying to a non-player entity. The look of the group of scrappers will be randomized between a select amount of looks and models. Scrappers will also have a select array of items they will spawn with, such as shovels, stun grenades, and zap guns. When seen by a scrapper, they will try to make sure you meet your end by any means necessary. The group that scrapper is a part of will join in once seen as well. Since they are people and not just monsters, they have the ability to open doors just like you. So you either have to kill them and get it over with, or move with precaution when looking for the scrap that just might save your life. Since the company is constantly looking for profit with their employees, it seems that everyone else in the universe wants to join in and take some cash for themselves. Most scrappers usually have pretty greedy tendencies, but not all scrappers are alike. They're not your everyday foul beast that you'd find on the moons. They're real people with real lives and unique traits to them. There's no way to pinpoint any similarities other than one goal, to make as much money as possible. There's been a spike in numbers of scrapper groups ever since the company started sending out employees. It's been a constant war of who can walk away with the most cash. One rule of thumb to always stick to is to not trifle with the scrappers. You'll never know who you're dealing with. And that's the end of my segment. I had a lot of fun coming up with my part, and I hope you enjoyed what I had to show. With that, let's move on to our next set of ideas. Next up, we have concepts presented by my friend Lumalight. He has some pretty cool enemy concepts to show off. Let's go over them. The announcer is a large wooden doll. It wears a black suit with a red bow tie and a black top hat with a microphone in their right hand. Its face being a large permanent smile with the inside of its mouth being a massive speaker. They once were machines designed to deter hostile enemies while people collected scrap from the various moons. Though one day something happened and they all simultaneously malfunctioned and, instead of keeping monsters away, began drawing them towards people. Production of announcers stopped shortly after this happened. You may find one roaming in the halls of the various moons, almost looking dead with its arms hanging as if they don't work, and its head hung low, but if it spots you, you're in trouble, as it will spring to life and incomprehensible noises akin to a spirit box will start coming from the speaker inside its mouth. Once it finishes talking, you may want to move as any nearby hostile entities will be given your current location and will drop everything to make a mad dash for it. If there's nothing there, the entities will go back to whatever they were doing. Of course, if you stuck around, then you are most likely to be ripped to shreds. Once the announcer enters the active state, it won't move until the target is either out of its line of sight or dead. After the announcer cannot find the target, it will enter the inactive state again and start wandering the facility looking for another challenger. For strategy, the announcer can only see directly in front of him, so being behind or even beside him can have you avoid him entirely. He takes 6 hits to kill with a shovel, and on the first hit, he will turn around and activate if he isn't already activated. But if you can kill him before he finishes talking, he won't be able to alert enemies. Another thing you can do is using the zap gun, you can cause the announcer to glitch out, making him call nearby hostile entities to attack himself and not the player. Of course, the best course of action if none of these options are available to you is to run as far away from him as possible once he finishes talking. The Electic is an entity that can spawn rarely outside, with it being much more common if the weather is stormy. They look like large ticks with strange yellow markings throughout their bodies. They begin to spawn later in the day with just one. The Electic will land on top of the ship and begin sucking the energy out, causing the ship to randomly lose power. When the ship loses power, the light monitor, terminal, and the lever to leave the moon all get disabled for the duration of the outage. With just one sucking away powder, the outages are rare and only last a couple of seconds, but as more and more show up to your ship, it may become near impossible to do anything except leave. There are a few things you can do against the Electic. You can hit it with a shovel a couple of times, and it will either leave or die, and if you don't have a shovel, you can just leave before too many show up, and it becomes dangerous to stay. Alternatively, you can try and tough it out with 5 Electics as they continuously sap your power away with only a few seconds of being able to access the ship's tools at a time. The Electic is made as a sort of counter to the strategy of leaving one person behind with a walkie, because now you have to equip them with a shovel and they have to leave the ship to kill the Electics, possibly making them vulnerable to dogs or forest giants. And there we have Luma's section. He has some pretty game-changing concepts that would really spice up the thought process while on a run. These enemies require you to always be on your toes no matter the run due to the high level of threat they present, especially the Electic. I really love his concepts, and I hope you do too. Next up to bat is my friend Cool Number 1, as he's known online. His enemy ideas are strong, to say the least. Let's get into them. For his lore segment, he decided to write up a travel log of an employee's encounter with the Combine. I'll read that to you now. Log 031. It all happened so fast. These things seemed like a minor inconvenience, but of course, anything can happen when you're working for God knows who. I was with my coworker. It seemed there was nothing on the moon, but something stuck to him. On his leg was a slime, but with a metallic texture and feel to it. We thought nothing of it, as it just felt a bit heavy, but seemingly harmless. But a minute later, another one stuck to him. Another minute, another one stuck. 4 stuck and he was barely moving. But lastly, another slime. The 5th one came and stuck on him. Almost immediately after that, the slime started spreading on his body, covering him up until he was slimed. He looked like a regular employee, only metallic and more so, controlled. He didn't move for a moment, but shortly after he started chasing me, and so I started running. I left immediately after, but the thought couldn't leave my mind. Something like this hasn't been documented in the bestiary, only the Hydrogear. I've named this supposed variant of it the Combine. The Combine is an entity that starts off not very harmful, but extremely dangerous if left alone for too long. One slime will stick onto a player and slow them down for a bit, but not too much. After this, the slime that stuck onto the player will basically act as a beacon for other Combine slimes to spawn and stick onto the player. The more slimes the player has on them, the slower they become, even messing with their sight/vision with their gray slime ooze. After the 5th slime sticks onto the player, the slimes will start to cover the player completely, killing them in 5 to 10 seconds. However, the slimes will continue to use the body, turning them into a Combine Walker. A Combine Walker will walk/run towards the player depending on if they're walking/running, but slower. If the Combine Walker gets a hand on a player, they will start converting them into a Combine Walker as well, with a process that takes a moment to fully convert. Combine slimes will start to spawn after the first one sticks on a player, so the best way is to kill the first slime. The solution? A stun gun. Voltage from the stun gun causes weird vibrations within the slime, and causes it to explode and die indefinitely. Hitting it with a shovel will cause it to stick to the shovel and onto you if you don't drop it. Shotguns are able to kill Combine slimes too, but a stun gun is way more convenient. Combine workers can only be killed if 2 stun guns are being used on it at once, otherwise it won't be killed. Shovels are able to be used on these things as well, only as a temporary solution though, however risky. 5 hits for it to be knocked down for 8 to 10 seconds. Shotguns, well, what do you think? When Combine workers are converting other players, it's a process that takes a few seconds. If a player has a shovel, they can interrupt this process and save their teammate, as well as stunning the Combine worker for a few seconds. The original concept for this monster was it'd still kill at 5 slimes, but instead of parasiting the body, they'd call for double slimes. There we have cool number 1 segment. His ideas on the Combine is extremely deadly, and it would add a whole lot more difficulty to the moons. I personally really enjoyed that operation log he did at the beginning. It's a very interesting way of adding more background and lore to his creations, and I'm all here for it. I hope you enjoyed his section as much as I did. We now have concepts from my friend Sona. The descriptions for their concepts are next level. Let's see them. A malformed humanoid ragdoll with patches that wishes to sew us into its body. It can have traps that snatch up the person who steps into it. Like a fly in a spider's web, it holds us captive until it can feed upon us. After it is done, it slices our skin off, creating, as it seems to believe, a work of art with its body. The other members of our crew can free the person who is caught, adding a stressful layer of suspension as we rush to cut the patchwork silk while the doll shambles its way towards us. When scrambling to our location, it digs its sickle-like claws into the ground, allowing it to propel itself forward. Its appearance is that of a hunched humanoid. As it walks around, its chest will often rub against the floor. Old, rotted cuts of skin hang off of it, gathering dirt as it drags itself near the ground or bumps into a wall. Its actual body, not covered by flesh patches, is tall and thin, mottled dark skin acting as a web over its unnatural bone structure. The entity does not have a spine, nor does it have hands or knees. Widespread paws keep its center of gravity afloat. It has thin, delicate appendages perfect for sewing, but it has the capability of ferocious clawing. Though only one can exist and its spawn rate is low, it is a threat that continuously hunts for its newest mosaic tile. I loved Sona's section quite a bit, mainly due to their ability to describe such horrifying mental imagery. You really get the sense of this lifeless, corpse-like ragdoll hunting throughout the moons. I was really impressed with theirs, and I hope you were too. My friend and past stream co-host Taxi has also given us concepts for this video. Her enemy concept was a pretty solid idea, and I think you'll quite like it. Let's check it out. The silo is an entity with not much information known about it because of its unsuspecting danger. These entities roam during the brightest parts of the day, the prime conditions for their hunting. The silo, which is a shadow creature, will latch itself onto your shadow, giving no indication of its presence. Once the silo is latched onto you, it will never leave, including indoors and on other planets. The only way to discover if you have the silo latched onto you is by looking at your own shadow while outside. If you count more than just yourself in your shadow, you must act quick. The way to deal with them is by shining a flashlight directly at them or by using some sort of light source. They will be in pain and immediately detach themselves and scurry off. If you notice at, let's say, near dusk, then it's too late. The silo after a certain period of time will use your shadow to hold you in place where you are unable to move. Then your body will be pulled into the shadowy abyss as you die. The silo's motives are unclear, as if their murder is due to bloodlust or for nutrients. Most employees don't even realize the silo is there until their movement is halted and they are killed. Because of their method of murder and their low visibility, there is little information recorded on them. One thing is certain, it's best to stay on alert, because if you slack off, the silo will take advantage of your ignorance of the threat they present. Her silo idea was really neat. Oddly enough, it reminds me of Don't Starve shadow creatures in a sense. The mechanics are completely different, but when I think of what the silo would look like, I envision the shadow creatures. She had a great concept, and I hope you enjoyed it. Our last presenter is my friend and fellow content creator, TheBanjo. He does a lot of 3D modeling and animation projects on his channel, so he's pretty good at creating cool concepts. I'll link his channel in the description if you want to check it out. With that out of the way, let's see his ideas. A randomly generated facility. It can look like either of two basic facilities, or an additional third one made completely of concrete seen on the current maps. There are no industrial elements, just long narrow hallways and one-way stairs to new floors. Many splitting paths. This will spawn enemies like normal, but it starts with non-existent spawn rate that increases the longer you stay and the deeper you go. Now here's the fun part. After a little bit of time in the Labyrinth, its curse will set in on all employees. It applies the looking at a dead body screen effect, and a lighter version of the muffled hearing effect normally caused by a ghost girl. Then employees start hallucinating. It will look like you see a creature, only for it to pass right through you or disappear before your eyes. Keep an eye out though, hallucinated creatures won't act quite the same as normal ones. The longer you stay and the deeper you go, the worse this effect will get. The hallucination rate will increase drastically. It will be as if you are constantly in danger, but there's a chance none of them are real. Doors will even start to appear where there is actually just a wall. Stairways will appear leading to nowhere. The sole purpose of this labyrinth is to terrify players and make it from hard to incredibly difficult to differentiate hallucinations from reality. However, the typical threats are still real. Mines, turrets, and monsters can still spawn like normal, and will look just like the hallucinations. Thankfully, the loot in the deeper parts of the labyrinth will be even better than the best haul from Titan. It is high risk, high reward. A skinny humanoid in burns and scars. He wears welding goggles and has large metallic wings melted onto his back. He won't hunt during the heat of the morning/midday sun, but after 3 p.m. he will be patrolling the skies looking for any junk that may be outside. If you are carrying junk and Zeekerss is hunting, he will swoop down quickly and snatch employees up. He will then drop their bodies. If an employee is taken, all of their loot is lost. However, if you drop loot beforehand, he will act similar to a loot bug and he will steal leftover loot on the ground. The only way to kill him is via lightning or taser. Signs and shotguns will have no effect. Ultimately, it's like a flying, immediately violent loot bug. A large goopy blob of muck-covered flesh that latches onto the ceiling, dangling a large item onto the floor, like a large axle or an engine. These items will have a slight shine that is only noticeable if you focus on it. If you grab the item, it will pull you up into the ceiling, hiding the body. Blood will remain on the ground, of course. If teammates can hit it with a shovel, though, it will spit out the bodies it's eaten. TheBanjo has some really unique ideas, which to be honest isn't surprising. He's always been good with innovation-based projects. I loved how different his facility idea was compared to the other facilities that we have currently in the game. The thought of having an entire facility with Ghost Girl-like hallucinations is super cool. Very much loved what he came up with, and I hope you do too. There we have it! That's me and my friend's collection of Lethal Company concepts. I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. While I can't speak for everyone who worked on it, I had loads of fun working on my group of concepts, as well as seeing everyone else's ideas get developed. I said it at the beginning, but I want to give a great thanks to all my friends who worked on this video and dedicated their time to coming up with these ideas. It was a great pleasure to work with all of you, and I want to maybe try to do more group videos in the future. Thank you to everyone watching this video as well. If you like this video, consider subscribing. I would love to have a bigger audience to show and help grow my content. I haven't been uploading frequently since this channel started, mainly due to the time it takes me to write scripts, but I'll try to get uploads out faster from now on. I also plan to release more short reviews in the future, so stay tuned for that. Last thing, if you have any Lethal Company ideas or concepts that you want to share, be sure to comment down below. I'd love to see a bunch of cool ideas. I'll be sure to respond to them. That's all from me. Until next time, cheers!